My husband gambled away our savings. I left and won the lottery a week later. If that isn't some cosmic joke from the universe, I don't know what is. Maybe karma does exist after all, and she's got one hell of a sense of humor. I should probably back up a bit. For those of you who don't know me, which is all of you, I'm Vanessa. 34 years old, marketing specialist, and until recently, proud owner of a joint savings account with my husband of 8 years, Michael. Well, ex-husband now. Or he will be once the paperwork goes through. It's funny how you can be married to someone for nearly a decade and still not really know them. Or maybe I did know him and I just didn't want to see it. The signs were there. The late nights, the secrecy around his phone, the unexplained cash withdrawals. Classic cheating behavior, right? God, I wish it had just been another woman. That would have been simpler. The day I found out started like any other Tuesday. I woke up at 6:30, scrolled mindlessly through my phone while Michael snored next to me. He'd been out late again the night before, some work thing he'd said. I remember thinking how peaceful he looked when he slept, how the worry lines on his forehead smoothed out, making him look more like the man I'd fallen in love with. If only I'd known what was causing those worry lines. I got up, showered, made coffee. Normal Tuesday stuff. Checked our joint account on my banking app to see if my paycheck had cleared. We were supposed to be putting the final payment down on our vacation to Bali next week, a second honeymoon of sorts. That's when I saw it, or rather didn't see it. Our savings account balance, $236.47. Last time I'd checked, about 2 weeks earlier, it had been just over $64,000. My coffee mug hit the kitchen tile before I even realized it had slipped from my fingers. The shatter echoed through our apartment like a gunshot, but I barely heard it over the rushing in my ears. $64,000. Gone. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the transaction history. Withdrawal after withdrawal, all within the past 11 days. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. The largest, $20,000, had been taken out just yesterday. My stomach lurched. The world tilted sideways. I remember bracing myself against the countertop, fragments of ceramic crunching under my slippers. I remember thinking, very calmly, very rationally, there must be some mistake. This can't be real. But it was real. Every single transaction had been authorized with Michael's credentials. I don't remember walking back to our bedroom. I don't remember throwing open the door. But I do remember the way Michael bolted upright in bed, his eyes wide with fear when he saw my face. He knew. One look at me, and he fucking knew. What I remember next comes in flashes. The sound of my own voice, eerily calm, asking him where our money was. The way his face crumpled, not in confusion but in resignation. The hollow feeling in my chest as he looked down at his hands instead of meeting my eyes. Gambling. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips when he was supposedly working late. A problem that had started small a year ago and spiraled out of control. He'd been chasing his losses, convinced that the next hand, the next game, the next bet would turn everything around. It never did. I stood there completely still as he cried. Actually cried. Fat tears rolling down his face as he told me how sorry he was, how he'd get help, how he'd fix this. And you know what the worst part was? A tiny piece of me felt sorry for him. That's how fucked up love is. Even as he was confessing to gambling away our future, some broken part of me wanted to comfort him. That part died when he mentioned Bali. I was going to win it all back before the trip, he said, his voice cracking. I had a system. It was going to work this time. Bali. Our second honeymoon. The trip we'd been planning for months. The trip we'd been saving for. Correction. I'd been saving for by brown bagging lunches and skipping happy hours and saying no to new clothes. Meanwhile, he'd been bleeding our account dry, betting on fucking basketball games or whatever. Something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, screaming way. It was quieter than that. More final, like a thread that had been stretching and stretching, finally giving way. I walked to the closet without saying a word, pulled out my suitcase, the one I'd bought for Bali, and started filling it. Underwear, t-shirts, jeans. I wasn't really thinking about what I was packing. I just needed to be doing something with my hands. Behind me, Michael's pleas grew more desperate. He'd go to therapy. He'd join Gamblers Anonymous. He'd get a second job. He'd do anything at all if I would just stop packing and talk to him. I didn't stop. I couldn't. If I stopped moving, if I let myself think too hard about what was happening, I might crumble. And I refused to crumble. Not in front of him. It took me 23 minutes to pack up 8 years of marriage. Just the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the photo album of my family. I left my wedding ring on the dresser. I didn't slam the door when I left. I just closed it quietly behind me, walked down 3 flights of stairs to the parking garage, got in my car, and drove. I made it 6 blocks before pulling over and throwing up on the side of the road. That's the thing about betrayal. It's physical. It's not just your heart that breaks. It's your whole body that revolts. My skin felt too tight. My lungs couldn't seem to fill properly. The taste of bile lingered in my mouth as I sat on the curb, traffic whizzing by, wondering what the fuck I was supposed to do now. I called in sick to work, checked into a hotel downtown, and spent the entire day staring at the ceiling. My phone buzzed constantly, Michael mostly, but also my best friend Jen wondering why I wasn't at work, and my mother sending her usual midday meme. I silenced it all. That first night alone was the worst. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw numbers, $64,000 disappearing in a series of reckless decisions. Our future, our security, our plans. All of it gambled away by the person I'd trusted most in the world. By morning, grief had hardened into something else, something with edges. I showered, dressed in yesterday's clothes, and called the only person I knew would understand without judgment, my older sister, Rachel. She'd been through a nasty divorce 3 years earlier. "Stay with me," she said immediately. "As long as you need." Rachel lived 2 hours away in a small town called Lakewood. I'd always teased her about moving to the middle of nowhere, but as I drove toward her that day, the nowhereness of it felt like exactly what I needed. The 3 days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, bank visits, and crying jags that seemed to come out of nowhere. Rachel held me through it all, poured me wine, reminded me to eat. I learned that in Massachusetts, gambling away marital assets is considered marital waste and can impact divorce settlements. I learned that Michael had maxed out 2 credit cards I didn't even know existed. I learned that I could go from laughing at one of Rachel's stupid jokes to sobbing uncontrollably in the span of seconds. Through it all, Michael kept calling, kept texting. His messages evolved from desperate apologies to thinly veiled accusations. If I'd paid more attention to him, if I hadn't been so focused on work, if I'd been more understanding of his stress. By the 5th day, I'd blocked his number. On day 6, I was standing in line at Lakewood's only decent coffee shop, exhausted from another night of fitful sleep, when I saw the lottery sign. 20 million jackpot. Not the big multi-state one, just the regular state lottery. Still, $20 million. I'd never bought a lottery ticket in my life. Michael and I used to joke that the lottery was a tax on people who couldn't do math. The irony wasn't lost on me as I handed over $5 for a quick pick ticket. $5 I couldn't really afford to waste, not now that I was essentially starting over from financial scratch. "Good luck," the cashier said, sliding the ticket across the counter. I almost threw it away. Almost. But then I tucked it into my wallet next to my maxed-out credit card and promptly forgot about it. Until a week later, exactly 7 days after I'd left Michael, when Rachel burst into the guest room at 8 a.m., her phone thrust in front of her like she was holding a live grenade. "Check your ticket," she said, her voice strange. "Check your fucking ticket right now." I blinked at her, groggy and confused. "What ticket?" "The lottery ticket. The one you bought last week. They just announced the winner on the radio. It was sold at Pete's Coffee in Lakewood." "Check it, Vanessa. Now." My heart should have been racing as I dug through my wallet. It wasn't. Because this kind of thing doesn't happen to real people, right? It certainly doesn't happen to women whose husbands just gambled away their life savings. I found the crumpled ticket and smoothed it out on the bedsheet. Read off the numbers to Rachel, who was frantically typing them into the lottery website on her phone. The silence that followed lasted approximately 2 eternities. And then Rachel screamed. Actually screamed, like someone had stabbed her. "You won," she whispered, her eyes wide. "You fucking won." I stared at her. "Won what?" "The jackpot. $20 million. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that lives right on the edge of hysteria, the kind that could tip over into sobbing at any moment. $20 million. My husband gambles away our $64,000 in savings. I leave him. 7 days later, I win $20 million. If that isn't some cosmic joke from the universe, I don't know what is. The reality of it didn't sink in immediately. In fact, it took several hours of Rachel reading the lottery rules to me, of calling the lottery office and verifying that yes, I had the winning ticket, and yes, I would need to come in person to claim my prize before I actually believed it. $20 million. Before taxes, of course. After the lump sum reduction and federal and state taxes, it would be closer to $8 million. Still, $8 million, and Michael had no claim to it. The ticket had been purchased after our separation, with my own money. It belonged to me and me alone. The hysterical laughter came back, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. $8 million. Enough to buy a house outright. Enough to pay off my student loans. Enough to take a dozen trips to Bali. Enough to make damn sure Michael would spend the rest of his life knowing exactly what he'd lost. I sat on Rachel's guest bed, lottery ticket clutched in my shaking hand, and felt something new unfurling inside me. Not grief, not anger. Something colder. Something sharper. Something that looked an awful lot like the beginning of a plan. I didn't claim my lottery winnings right away. That might sound insane. Who wins millions and doesn't immediately cash in? But I needed time to think, to plan. $20 million changes everything, especially when your life has just imploded. I wasn't about to make any rash decisions. Rachel thought I was being ridiculous. The longer you wait, the more interest you're losing, she kept saying, as if I should be worried about interest when I was about to become a multi-millionaire. But this wasn't just about money. This was about power. For the first time since discovering our empty savings account, I had it, and I was going to use it. I spent 3 days researching financial advisors, tax attorneys, investment strategies, privacy laws surrounding lottery winners. Did you know that in Massachusetts you can claim lottery winnings through a trust to maintain your anonymity? I didn't. But I learned fast. I called a lawyer, not the divorce attorney I'd been consulting, but a serious estate planning lawyer from Boston who charged $600 an hour and was worth every penny. I drove to his office in Rachel's ancient Honda, wearing Target jeans and a hoodie, clutching the winning ticket in a sealed envelope. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, didn't blink when I slid the ticket across his glossy mahogany desk. He just nodded and said, "We'll need to establish a blind trust immediately." 2 hours and $1,200 later, I had a plan. The Lucky Day Trust would claim my winnings. Mr. Harrison would be the trustee of record. My name wouldn't appear on a single public document. The money would flow into a series of accounts he would establish, and from there I could do whatever I wanted. The press release will go out next week, Mr. Harrison informed me. You'll be listed as a Massachusetts resident who wishes to remain anonymous. Standard procedure. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. And my husband? Ex-husband soon. He won't be able to trace this back to me? Mr. Harrison's eyebrows lifted slightly, the only indication that he found my question interesting. Not through public records, no. But Ms. Campbell, I should advise you that if you're planning to divorce, all assets acquired during the marriage. We're already separated. I cut in. I left him last week. The ticket was purchased after that with my own money. A small, satisfied smile. Then legally these winnings are your separate property. Your husband would have no claim to them. The relief was so intense I actually felt dizzy. $8 million. All mine. On my way back to Rachel's, I stopped at a gas station and bought a burner phone. Old school, I know, but I wasn't taking any chances. I needed to make some calls that couldn't be traced back to me. My first call was to my old college roommate, Dina. She'd gone into real estate after graduation and now ran her own agency in Boston. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 2 years, but she picked up on the second ring. Vanessa Campbell? Holy shit! I was just thinking about you last week. I doubted that, but it didn't matter. Dina, I need your help with something confidential. Really confidential. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its perkiness. Are you okay? Is this about Michael? Sort of. I took a deep breath. I need to buy a house. Today. Cash deal, as quickly and quietly as possible. Another pause. Vanessa, did you rob a bank or something? I laughed. A real laugh this time, not the hysterical kind from before. No, nothing like that. I just came into some money. And I need to move fast. To her credit, Dina didn't ask any more questions. She just said, "Okay, what are you looking for?" What was I looking for? I closed my eyes and thought about it. I wanted something impressive, something that would make a statement. Something that would make Michael sick with envy when he eventually found out. A penthouse, I said finally. Downtown Riverview. At least 2 bedrooms. High security building. The kind of place Michael always said we'd live in someday when we made it. Budget? Dina asked, all business now. I smiled into the phone. $3 million. Max. The silence on the other end of the line was deeply satisfying. By nightfall, I had toured 3 properties and made an offer on the second one, a 2-story penthouse on the 37th floor of a luxury building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen I'd probably never use, and a private roof deck. $2.8 million. Cash offer, no contingencies, closable in 7 days through my newly established trust. The selling agent nearly wept with joy. I returned to Rachel's house after dark, my mind buzzing with plans. I had a house. Soon I'd have millions in the bank. I was rebuilding my life at warp speed, creating something new from the ashes of what Michael had destroyed. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. That night, I finally looked at Michael's messages. There were dozens of them, escalating in desperation as the days passed. The most recent ones showed a new tone. Where are you getting the money to pay for a lawyer? Your sister? Just found out you cleaned out your personal checking account. Planning to run away for good? Real mature, V. Your boss called me today asking if I've heard from you. What am I supposed to tell people? That my wife abandoned our marriage over one mistake? One mistake. One mistake. As if gambling away 8 years of savings, our savings, was equivalent to forgetting to take out the trash or burning dinner. I scrolled back further, reading his earlier, more desperate messages. Please come home. I'm dying without you. I'll do anything to fix this. I sold my car today. Got $18,500 for it. It's a start toward paying you back. I went to my first GA meeting. It was hard, but I'm committed to getting better. For us, gambling addiction is a real disease. I know that. I'm not a monster. Part of me, a small, shrinking part, even felt bad for him. But sympathy wasn't going to restore our savings or our trust. And it certainly wasn't going to change my plans. I typed out a response, careful to sound like my normal self, a woman struggling financially after her husband's betrayal, not someone who'd just bought a multi-million-dollar penthouse. I need space to figure things out. I'm staying with Rachel for now. Don't contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch about divorce proceedings. Then I blocked his number again. The next morning, I woke up with purpose. Phase 1 of my plan was in motion, financial security. Now for Phase 2, the actual revenge. See, winning the lottery was incredible luck, literally life-changing, but it wasn't revenge. Revenge required intention. Strategy. It required making sure Michael understood exactly what he'd lost and how badly he'd fucked up. I spent the day making lists. The first was practical, steps to establish my new life. Claim lottery winnings through trust. Buy house, done. Hire financial team, resign from job, move into new place, file for divorce. The second list was less practical. It was every petty, vindictive thought I'd had since discovering our empty bank account, every fantasy of making Michael suffer the way I had suffered. Some were childish, mail him glitter bombs every week for a year. Some were illegal, hack his accounts and donate all his money to gambling addiction charities. Some were just sad, make sure he sees photos of me enjoying Bali without him. I crossed out the illegal ones. I wasn't ruining my life over him, but kept the rest. Then I started a third list. People from our shared past who should know what happened, not for gossip's sake, but because they deserved the truth. My parents, his parents, our closest friends, his boss, who'd invited us to dinner just last month and spent the entire evening talking about his own investment strategies, while Michael nodded along like he had any fucking clue about responsible investing. That night, I had my first real meal in days. Rachel cooked pasta and opened wine, and we sat on her back porch watching fireflies appear as the sun set. "So what's the plan?" she asked, refilling my glass. "Besides buying ridiculously expensive real estate, I mean." I took a sip of wine and told her everything. The trust, the burner phone, the lists I'd made, the revenge I was planning. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to understanding to something that looked like pride. "You know," she said when I finished, "most people who get screwed over never get the chance to balance the scales. They just have to eat the loss and move on. But you," she raised her glass, "you get to write the ending to this story." I clinked my glass against hers. "Damn right I do." The next week passed in a whirlwind of activity. Mr. Harrison's office handled the lottery claim and the house purchase. My new financial advisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet with 20 years of experience managing sudden wealth clients, helped me establish investment accounts that would generate enough passive income for me to never work again if I didn't want to. My divorce attorney filed the initial paperwork, citing irreconcilable differences and Michael's financial misconduct. I resigned from my marketing job with a vague explanation about needing to focus on personal matters. My boss, who'd been surprisingly understanding about my unexpected absence, tried to convince me to take a leave of absence instead. I almost felt bad saying no. Almost. Through it all, I maintained absolute secrecy about the lottery win. As far as the world knew, as far as Michael knew, I was just a woman starting over after her husband gambled away their savings. A woman staying with her sister, hiring a divorce attorney she probably couldn't afford, making desperate choices in desperate times. The day before I was scheduled to move into my new penthouse, I finally called my parents. They lived in Arizona now, having relocated for my dad's health 3 years ago. We spoke weekly, but I'd been avoiding their calls since everything happened. My mother answered on the first ring. "Vanessa? Oh, thank God. We've been so worried." I swallowed hard. "I'm okay, Mom. But I have some news." I told them everything. Well, almost everything. I told them about Michael's gambling and our empty accounts, about leaving him and staying with Rachel, about hiring a divorce attorney. I left out the lottery win. That news would come later, when everything else was settled. My mother cried. My father, never a man of many words, was silent for a long time before saying, "You're doing the right thing, sweetheart." That man broke a fundamental trust. There's no coming back from that. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear those words until they were spoken. My throat tightened. "Thanks, Dad. Do you need money?" My mother asked immediately. "We can help. It won't be much, but I'm okay," I assured her. "I've got some savings in my personal account." It wasn't even a lie, technically. I did have savings, about $8 million worth. After hanging up, I sat on Rachel's couch feeling hollow but resolved. Telling my parents had made everything more real somehow. There was no going back now, even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to. Not at all. The day I moved into my new penthouse was the same day the Lucky Day Trust was announced as the winner of the $20 million lottery jackpot. True to his word, Mr. Harrison kept my name completely out of it. The press release simply stated that a Massachusetts resident who wishes to remain anonymous had claimed the prize through a trust. It made the local news, of course. There was speculation about the winner, interviews with people who'd been at Pete's Coffee in Lakewood around the time the ticket was sold. I watched it all from my new living room, sipping champagne on a couch I'd ordered online and had delivered that morning, feeling like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Enjoying your palace, Cinderella?" I smiled and sent back a photo of my champagne glass against the backdrop of the river view. She responded with a series of fire emojis and then, "So when does Phase 2 begin?" Phase 2. The revenge part of my revenge plan. I'd been thinking about it constantly, refining it, adjusting it as new ideas came to me. It had evolved from a list of petty actions into something more comprehensive. "Tomorrow," I texted back. "I'm meeting with the private investigator at 10. Yes, I'd hired a private investigator. Not to follow Michael or anything dramatic like that. I already knew where he was and what he was doing. Still in our apartment, still working his sales job, still attending GA meetings according to his pathetic texts. No, I'd hired the PI to dig into Michael's gambling history. I wanted to know everything. When it started, how much he'd really lost, who he owed money to, what he'd been hiding from me beyond the obvious. Because here's the thing about addicts. They lie. Not just to their loved ones, but to themselves. I needed to know the full truth before I proceeded. The PI, a former cop named Diane with a no-nonsense attitude I immediately appreciated, had promised a preliminary report within a week. I'd paid her double her usual rate for the rush job. While I waited for her findings, I focused on setting up my new life. I bought furniture. I updated my wardrobe. I opened new social media accounts under a slightly modified version of my name, Vanessa M. Campbell instead of Vanessa Campbell, and began carefully curating what the world would see of my new reality. Not everything, of course. Just enough to make certain people, one person in particular, wonder. Just enough to plant seeds. I also made a significant donation to the state gambling addiction hotline. Anonymous, of course. But knowing that some of my lottery money, my ridiculous karmic lottery money, would go toward helping people like Michael gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. Not because I thought it would help him specifically, but because it balanced something in my own moral universe. A cosmic correction. 3 weeks after leaving Michael, I was settled in my new home, financially secure for life, and poised to set my real revenge in motion. The divorce papers had been served. The PI's report sat on my new desk, its contents even more damning than I'd expected. My plan was polished and ready to execute. I stood on my private roof deck that night, looking out over the river, the city lights reflecting in its dark surface. The air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of approaching autumn. In the distance, I could just make out the rooftop of the apartment building where Michael and I had lived together, where he still lived now, alone. $8 million in the bank. A new home, a new life, freedom, and he had no idea. Not yet. I smiled into the darkness, anticipation thrumming through me like electricity. Phase 2 would begin tomorrow, and Michael would finally understand exactly what he'd lost when he decided to place that first bet. The PI's report on Michael was worse than I'd imagined. 412 pages of documented betrayal, itemized by date, amount, and type of gambling. It wasn't just the $64,000 from our joint savings. That was merely the finale of a much longer performance. In total, Diane explained as we sat in my sun-drenched living room, your husband lost approximately $216,000 over the past 18 months. I nearly choked on my coffee. That's not possible. We didn't have that kind of money. Diane's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held a familiar sympathy. She'd seen this before. Credit cards, personal loans, cash advances. And these, she slid a document across the glass coffee table, are what we call unofficial loans. I scanned the list of names. None were familiar except one, Frank Casalini, Michael's boss. He borrowed $40,000 from his employer? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Without documentation, yes. What's known in certain circles as a gentleman's agreement. Diane's mouth twisted. There's nothing gentlemanly about it when it goes south. My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages. Bank statements. Credit card bills addressed to our apartment that I'd never seen. Records of pawned items, including, my stomach lurched, my grandmother's sapphire earrings that Michael had claimed were being cleaned for our anniversary. Mr. Campbell also made several retrievals from his 401k, Diane continued, pointing to a highlighted section. Early withdrawals with substantial penalties. I set the papers down, suddenly exhausted. So he didn't just gamble away our present. He gambled away our future, too. That's generally how addiction works, Diane said, not unkindly. It consumes everything, past, present, and future. I nodded, thinking of the many times Michael had talked about our retirement plans. How we'd travel the world, buy a beach house, all while he was secretly liquidating the very accounts meant to fund those dreams. There's one more thing, Diane said, hesitating for the first time. It's in the addendum. The addendum was a thin folder separate from the main report. Inside was a series of photos, text message screenshots, and what appeared to be hotel receipts. I don't understand, I said, flipping through them. What am I looking at? Your husband had an affair, Diane said bluntly, with a woman named Caroline Winters. She works at the Silver Palace Casino in Shelton. From what we've gathered, the relationship began approximately 9 months ago and appears to be ongoing. The room tilted briefly, then righted itself. An affair, of course. Because gambling away our life savings wasn't quite devastating enough. She's a VIP host, Diane continued. Her job is to cater to high rollers, make them feel special, build loyalty. I studied a grainy photo of Michael embracing a tall blonde woman outside a hotel. They were laughing about something. He looked happy, carefree, like a man without $200,000 of gambling debt. Did she know he was losing everything? I asked, surprised by how calm I sounded. That's her job, Diane replied. To keep the whales playing, no matter the cost. Whales. High rollers. The casino's pet name for addicts with access to cash. I closed the folder and sat back, letting it all wash over me. The lies, the betrayal, the sheer scope of Michael's deception. It was breathtaking, really. Almost impressive in its thoroughness. Thank you, I said finally. This is more than I expected. Diane nodded and began gathering her things. Your attorney has copies of everything. All evidence has been collected legally and can be used in divorce proceedings. As she reached the door, she turned back. One more thing, Ms. Campbell. The type of people your husband owes money to. They don't typically file paperwork with collections agencies. The warning was clear, even if her tone remained professional. I understand. After she left, I sat motionless, staring at the stack of papers that chronicled the systematic dismantling of my marriage. $216,000. An affair with a casino host, secret loans from his boss, and Michael had the audacity to text me about one mistake. I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey, an expensive Japanese single malt I'd bought simply because I could now, and carried it out to my rooftop deck. The evening air was cool against my skin as I sipped slowly, my mind crystallizing around a new, improved plan. Because revenge, like whiskey, is better when it's had time to develop complexity. Phase 2 of my plan began with a single photograph. I'd hired a professional photographer, the kind who usually does architectural spreads for luxury real estate listings, to capture my new penthouse in all its glory. Floor-to-ceiling windows, custom furnishings. The private roof deck with its panoramic city views. Me, casually elegant in the foreground, champagne flute in hand. The photo was perfect, tasteful yet undeniably opulent. The kind of image that makes people wonder, how the hell did she afford that? Which was exactly the question I wanted Michael to ask. I posted it to my new Instagram account with a simple caption, "New beginnings. Blessed." Then I waited. It took less than 3 hours. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is this some kind of joke? Where are you? How are you affording that place? Call me. Michael, using a friend's phone to bypass my block. Predictable. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I proceeded with step 2, a carefully orchestrated chance. Encounter with Tessa Williams, the biggest gossip from our social circle. I'd invited her for coffee at an exclusive cafe near my new building, explaining that I needed a friend during this difficult transition. Tessa arrived 15 minutes late, already talking before she'd even sat down. I can't believe what Michael did. Everyone is just shocked. Simply shocked. And gambling of all things? James and I were just saying the other night how you never really know someone, do you? I smiled thinly. James, Tessa's husband, had once gotten so drunk at our holiday party that he'd propositioned me in our guest bathroom. People in glass houses and all that. It's been an adjustment, I said, sipping my latte. But I'm finding my way. Tessa's eyes darted around the upscale cafe, taking in the clientele, mostly well-dressed professionals and ladies who lunch. This place is new, isn't it? I've been meaning to try it. The pastries are incredible, I said. My treat. Her eyebrows lifted slightly at my generosity. Good. Seeds planted. We chatted for an hour, during which I carefully dropped hints about my unexpected change in circumstances, and how sometimes the universe has a way of balancing things out. I mentioned my new address casually, as if everyone suddenly moves to luxury penthouses after their husband gambles away their savings. Tessa was practically vibrating with curiosity by the time we said goodbye, but she didn't ask the obvious questions. She didn't have to. I'd given her just enough information to ensure she'd be theorizing wildly to everyone we knew within the hour. As I watched her practically sprint to her car, phone already pressed to her ear, I felt a small twinge of satisfaction. Gossip travels faster than light in our social circle. By dinner time, Michael would be fielding questions about my mysterious newfound wealth. Step 3 was more direct. I called Frank Casalini, Michael's boss. Frank and his wife had been part of our social periphery for years, the kind of couple you have dinner with occasionally but don't actually confide in. He answered on the second ring, his voice wary. Vanessa? Is everything all right? No, Frank, everything is not all right. I replied calmly. I just received some concerning information about a personal loan between you and Michael. $40,000, I believe? The silence on the other end was deafening. I'm not calling to cause problems. I continued, my voice soft but firm. I just thought you should know that I'm aware of the situation and that I'll be addressing all of Michael's debts as part of our divorce settlement. Vanessa, Frank started, then stopped. Look, this is between Michael and me. A business arrangement. A business arrangement, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Is that what you call lending money to an employee with a gambling addiction? Another long silence. He told me it was for a real estate investment. I almost laughed. And you believed him? He's a good employee, Frank said defensively. A good friend. Well, this good friend has been lying to everyone in his life for at least 18 months. But I'm sure you're the exception. I couldn't keep the sarcasm from my voice. What do you want, Vanessa? Frank asked, suddenly sounding tired. What did I want? I considered the question. I could demand he fire Michael. I could threaten to tell his wife about the loan. I could make his life very difficult. But that wasn't really my goal. My goal was to isolate Michael, to strip away the support systems he'd maintained through lies, and let him face the consequences of his actions alone, just as I'd had to. I want you to call in the loan, I said finally. All of it. Immediately. He can't pay it, Frank protested. You know that. I do know that, I agreed. Which means you have a choice to make. Write it off as a loss or hold him accountable. But whatever you decide, I want him to know that his secret is out, that everyone knows. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and navigated to the website for the Silver Palace Casino, found the Contact Us page, and composed a brief professional email to the general manager. Attached was a photo of Caroline Winters, Michael's casino girlfriend, and a copy of Michael's gambling losses from the PI report. The subject line read simply, "Predatory practices by your VIP host." Casinos hate scrutiny almost as much as they hate losing money. An employee who cultivates personal relationships with addicted gamblers is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Caroline would likely be looking for a new job by the end of the week. One by one, I was dismantling the structures of Michael's secret life. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael's friend's phone. "Whatever game you're playing needs to stop. Where did you get the money for that apartment? Are you involved with someone? Is that what this is about?" I smiled at the desperate tone, the accusatory edge. Classic Michael, assuming I'd replaced him with another man because his ego couldn't fathom an alternative explanation. This time I replied, "No games, Michael. Just a fresh start. We can discuss it at the attorney's office next week." His response was immediate. "I'm coming over." I didn't dignify that with a reply. Even if he somehow got my address, the security in my building was top-notch. No one got past the lobby without resident approval. Instead, I settled in for a quiet evening at home, knowing that across town, Michael's carefully constructed house of cards was beginning to collapse. Frank would be demanding his money back. Tessa would be spreading rumors about my sudden wealth. The casino would be investigating Caroline Winters. And Michael would be frantically trying to figure out how I knew his secrets. The whiskey tasted even better the second time around. Our scheduled meeting at my attorney's office was set for Tuesday at 2 p.m. It was meant to be preliminary, a discussion of assets, or lack thereof, and terms before formal divorce proceedings began. I arrived 20 minutes early, dressed in a simple but expensive black dress that I'd never have been able to afford in my previous life. My attorney, Sandra Patel, greeted me with a professional nod and ushered me into her corner office with its impressive view of the financial district. "How are you holding up?" she asked as we settled into sleek leather chairs. "I'm good," I said and meant it. "Better than expected, actually." Sandra smiled slightly. "I must say, you're one of the more composed clients I've had in this situation. If she only knew." At exactly 2 p.m., her assistant announced that Michael had arrived. Sandra gave me a questioning look. "Are you ready?" And I nodded. And then there he was, standing in the doorway looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. His normally impeccable appearance had slipped. Wrinkled shirt, shadowed jawline, dark circles under his eyes. He looked simultaneously stunned and suspicious when he saw me, taking in my composed demeanor, my new clothes, my apparent well-being in the face of financial ruin. "Vanessa," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and wariness. "Michael," I replied coolly. "You look tired." He flinched at my tone, then turned to Sandra with an attempt at his usual charm. "Michael Campbell. I apologize for not having my own representation today. This meeting was unexpected." Sandra nodded without warmth. "Please have a seat, Mr. Campbell. We have a lot to discuss." He sat across from me, his eyes never leaving my face. "You look good," he said softly, as if we were alone. "Really good." I didn't respond. Sandra opened a folder and began outlining the purpose of our meeting, to establish a framework for division of assets and liabilities in preparation for filing a formal divorce petition. She spoke in crisp, professional terms about financial misconduct and marital waste, occasionally referencing documents in front of her. Michael interrupted. "I know I made a terrible mistake. I've been getting help, GA meetings 3 times a week. I'm making arrangements to pay back what I lost." His eyes pleaded with me. "This doesn't have to be the end, V. We could try counseling. Work through this." I looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him. The man I'd loved, the man I'd built a life with, the man who'd destroyed it all for the rush of a bet. "Did Caroline suggest that?" I asked quietly. His face went slack with shock. "What?" "Caroline Winters. Your girlfriend from the Silver Palace? Did she think counseling would help us work through your gambling addiction and your affair?" The color drained from his face. "How did you—" "Or maybe Frank advised you to suggest counseling," I continued, my voice still calm. After all, he has 40,000 reasons to want our marriage intact. Michael's hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles whitened. Vanessa, I can explain. $216,000, Michael. I leaned forward slightly. That's how much you lost gambling in the past 18 months. Not just our savings. Everything. Credit cards, 401k withdrawals, loans from friends, pawning my grandmother's earrings. Everything. He looked like he might be sick. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That I'd just accept your story about one mistake and move on? Sandra cleared her throat gently, reminding us of her presence. Perhaps we should focus on the division of assets. There are no assets, Michael said hoarsely. She knows that. It's all gone. Not all of it, I corrected. You still have your car. Oh wait, you sold that to pay me back. How noble. The sarcasm wasn't lost on him. His expression hardened. I'm trying to make this right. No, you're trying to manage the consequences. I shot back. There's a difference. Sandra intervened again, this time more firmly. Mr. Campbell, my client has authorized me to propose the following terms. She will assume no responsibility for any debts incurred through your gambling activities. The lease on your shared apartment will be transferred solely to your name. Ms. Campbell will retain her personal possessions, including anything removed from the apartment prior to separation. In exchange, she's willing to waive any claim to future earnings or assets. Michael frowned, confusion replacing defensiveness. Wait, what? She's not asking for alimony? No, I'm not, I confirmed. But how are you supporting yourself? That apartment I saw online, that Instagram post, you can't afford that place on your salary. And there it was. The opening I'd been waiting for. I smiled. You're right. I can't. His eyes narrowed. So someone is helping you. Who is it? Some rich guy you were seeing behind my back? The accusation was so rich with irony I almost laughed. Almost. No, Michael. No rich boyfriend. Just extraordinarily good luck. I reached into my purse and withdrew a newspaper clipping, the announcement of the lottery win by the Lucky Day Trust. Do you remember that trip I took to visit Rachel? Right after I found out about our empty bank account? He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the clipping. While I was there, I bought a lottery ticket. One ticket, $5. I'd never bought one before in my life. I slid the clipping across the table toward him. I won $20 million. The silence in the room was absolute. Sandra, who'd been briefed in advance, remained professionally impassive. Michael stared at the clipping, then at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, shock, and something darker. That's not possible, he finally managed. I assure you it is, Sandra interjected smoothly. The winnings have been properly claimed through a blind trust, with all appropriate taxes paid. My client is now the sole beneficiary of those funds. Michael's breathing had become shallow. $20 million, he repeated as if saying it aloud might make it less true. $8 million after taxes, I corrected. But who's counting? The look on his face in that moment, pure, unadulterated regret mixed with the dawning realization of what he'd lost, was worth more than all $8 million combined. If you hadn't gambled away our savings, I said softly, we would have been in Bali when that ticket was purchased. It would never have existed. We'd still be together, living our normal lives. Vanessa, his voice broke. Your choices led us here, Michael. Every bet, every lie, every night with Caroline. You created this outcome. He leaned forward, desperation in every line of his body. We could start over. Together. With the money we could… No. I cut him off firmly. There is no we anymore. The money is mine. The life I'm building is mine. Michael's face darkened. So that's it? You get everything and I get nothing? After 8 years of marriage? You got exactly what you earned, I replied, my voice steely. And so did I. Sandra shifted slightly beside me, a silent signal that we should wrap this up. I nodded and stood. The divorce papers will be ready for your signature by the end of the week, I told Michael. I suggest you find an attorney to review them. Although given your financial situation, that might be difficult. He stood too, his earlier shock hardening into anger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me suffer? I considered the question seriously. Was I enjoying it? The justice of it, yes. The vindication, absolutely. But enjoyment implied a lightness, a pleasure. This felt heavier than that, more like resolution, like balance being restored. I'm moving on, I said finally. That's all? You should too. As I turned to leave, Michael called after me. Those GA meetings I mentioned? I meant it. I'm trying to get better. I paused at the door and looked back at him. I hope you do get better, Michael. I really do. Just not for me. In the elevator down to the lobby, Sandra glanced at me with something like admiration. That was impressive. Most clients lose their composure in these situations. I smiled faintly. I've had time to practice. The truth was, confronting Michael had been both easier and harder than I'd expected. Easier because I'd prepared so thoroughly, harder because beneath all my righteous anger and carefully orchestrated revenge, there was still a whisper of the love we'd once shared. A ghost of the man I thought he was. But ghosts fade with time. And I had all the time in the world now. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clear. I decided to walk home, giving myself space to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Well, how did it go? Is he destroyed? Are you okay?" I smiled and typed back, "Mission accomplished. He's gutted. I'm free." It was true, I realized. For the first time since discovering our empty bank account, I felt truly, completely free. Not just financially, but emotionally. The weight of betrayal and hurt and rage that I'd been carrying had lightened, not disappeared entirely, but transformed into something manageable. As I walked the busy downtown streets toward my new home, I thought about Michael sitting in that office, confronting the consequences of his choices. How the fantasies he'd chased, the thrill of gambling, the excitement of an affair, had cost him everything real and valuable in his life. I thought about the cosmic joke of it all, that his addiction had inadvertently led to my fortune. That in trying to win big, he'd lost everything, while I'd won more than either of us had ever dreamed possible. I thought about karma and justice and the strange paths that lives can take. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Really laughed, startling a passing businessman who quickened his steps away from the woman cackling to herself on the sidewalk. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. I had 8 million reasons not to care. 6 months can change everything. 6 months after that meeting in Sandra's office, my divorce was finalized. 6 months of paperwork and negotiations, and Michael's increasingly desperate attempts to delay the inevitable. 6 months of him trying to convince me, through friends, through emails, once through a handwritten letter delivered to my building's concierge, that we could start over, that he deserved another chance, that my lottery win was a sign from the universe, that we were meant to be together, as if the universe would ever be that cruel. The divorce decree arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. I was drinking coffee on my rooftop deck, wrapped in a cashmere throw against the lingering winter chill, when the courier delivered the envelope. Just like that, 8 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal papers with a gold seal and a judge's signature. I should have felt something momentous, I think. Some great wave of emotion, relief or sadness or vindication. Instead, I just felt calm, like the final scene of a movie I'd already watched too many times. Which is not to say the past 6 months had been uneventful. Far from it. 2 weeks after our meeting, Michael had been fired from his job. Frank Casalini had apparently decided to cut his losses, both financial and professional, when Michael couldn't repay the loan. That same week, Caroline Winters was quietly let go from the Silver Palace Casino. Last I heard, she'd moved to Vegas for a fresh start. Fitting, I suppose. Michael had been forced to move out of our apartment when he couldn't make rent. According to Rachel, who maintained loose connections with our old social circle, he'd been couch-surfing for a while before finally moving back in with his parents in New Hampshire, at 42. Ouch. Meanwhile, I'd been building a life I'd never imagined possible. The kind of life that only happens when you combine financial freedom with the particular clarity that comes from having your entire existence upended. I'd traveled, not to Bali, which still felt too tied to my old life with Michael, but to places I'd always dreamed of. A month in Japan. 3 weeks exploring coastal Italy. A spontaneous trip to New Zealand when January's bitter cold became too much. I'd started a foundation focused on financial literacy for women, funded by a portion of my lottery winnings. The Luck and Wisdom Foundation, a name that made me smile every time I saw it on letterhead. We partnered with domestic violence shelters and community colleges, teaching women how to protect themselves financially in relationships, how to spot the warning signs I'd missed, how to build security that couldn't be gambled away. And most surprisingly, I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, I wasn't ready for that yet, but dinner here, a museum visit there. Normal human connection without the weight of betrayal hanging over every interaction. Progress of a sort. I set the divorce papers aside and took another sip of coffee, watching the city wake up below me. A strange gratitude washed over me as I thought about how differently things might have turned out. If Michael hadn't gambled away our savings, I'd never have left him. If I hadn't left him, I'd never have been in Lakewood to buy that lottery ticket. If I hadn't won the lottery, I might have spent years rebuilding from financial ruin, carrying the burden of his betrayal. The cosmic joke that had seemed so darkly funny 6 months ago now felt like something else. Not quite a blessing. The pain had been too real for that, but maybe a course correction. A brutal but necessary redirection toward a life that was actually mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Is today the day? Are you finally free from that asshole?" I smiled and typed back, "Officially divorced as of this morning. Drinks later to celebrate?" Rachel's response was immediate. "Hell yes. My place or yours?" Trick question. Obviously yours because it's a literal palace. As I was about to reply, another message came through from an unknown number. "Congratulations on the divorce. I hope you're happy with yourself and your millions. Some of us are still picking up the pieces." Michael, of course. I hadn't heard from him directly in weeks, not since he'd finally signed the divorce papers after Sandra threatened to take the case to court. Part of me was surprised he still had a phone, given his financial situation. I considered blocking the number without responding. That would be the cleanest, healthiest choice. The kind of choice a therapist would approve of. Instead, I typed, "I am happy actually. Not because of what happened to you, but because of what I built afterward. I hope you find a way to do the same." I hit send before I could reconsider, then immediately blocked the number. Not out of anger or spite, but because some conversations need to end for new beginnings to take root. That night, Rachel came over with 2 bottles of expensive champagne and an enormous box of pastries from my favorite bakery. We sat on my living room floor like college students, drinking directly from the bottles and getting flaky pastry crumbs all over my designer rug. "To freedom," Rachel toasted, raising her bottle. "To unexpected second chances?" I countered, clinking my bottle against hers. "So what's next?" she asked, licking chocolate from her fingers. Now that it's really officially over, I considered the question. What was next? For so long, my focus had been on survival, then on revenge, then on rebuilding. I'd never really allowed myself to look beyond that. "I don't know," I admitted. "And that's kind of amazing," Rachel smiled. "I have a suggestion. If it involves setting Michael's car on fire, we've discussed this. Arson is still illegal, even for lottery winners." She laughed. "No, nothing like that." I was thinking, what if you bought Mom and Dad a house? Near you? They're getting older, and Arizona is so far away. The idea hit me with unexpected force. My parents, who had worked so hard their whole lives, who had supported me through everything, including the divorce, who had never asked me for a penny of my lottery winnings, even when I'd finally told them about it. "That's actually perfect," I said slowly. "Do you think they'd accept it?" Rachel snorted. "You might have to frame it as them doing you a favor. You know how they are about handouts, but they miss you. They worry about you being alone." "I'm not alone," I protested, gesturing between us with my champagne bottle. "I have you. And approximately 8 million other friends." But I knew what she meant. Family was different, and the idea of having my parents nearby, of being able to care for them the way they'd always cared for me, felt right in a way that nothing else had in a long time. "I'll look into it tomorrow," I decided. "Maybe that brownstone that just listed in Beacon Hill. The one with the garden Dad would love." Rachel beamed. "See? That's what you do with fuck you money. You take care of the people who matter." I laughed at her phrasing, but she wasn't wrong. The greatest gift of my unexpected wealth wasn't the penthouse or the travel or even the financial security. It was the freedom to choose where my energy went. Who deserved my time, my attention, my resources? Not Michael, not anymore. But my parents, my sister, the women at my foundation, the people who had stood by me at my worst and who deserved to share in my best. Later that night, after Rachel had gone home and I was getting ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked different than I had a year ago, stronger, more confident, with a clarity in my eyes that hadn't been there before. "My husband gambled away our savings," I said to my reflection, echoing the thought that had consumed me for so long. "I left and won the lottery a week later." But it wasn't the whole story anymore. It was just the beginning, the first chapter of a much longer, more interesting book that I was still writing. I smiled at myself, turned off the light, and went to bed, dreaming not of revenge or justice or cosmic jokes, but of brownstones with gardens, of family dinners on my rooftop deck, of all the chapters yet to come. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone else's life, it's building a better one for yourself.